You know that moment when you see a child have a reaction that just seems huge, totally out of proportion to what's going on? Well, today, we're going to explore why that might not be an overreaction at all. It might actually be a window into a profoundly deep and rich inner world. So let's dive in and see what's really happening inside the heart of a child who feels everything.
Okay, picture this, because this is where our whole story starts. A 5-year-old is watching a movie, a character gets picked on, and they are just wrecked. I mean, sobbing uncontrollably. And it doesn't just end when the scene is over. No, this feeling sticks around for days, maybe even weeks. It feels real, personal, almost like it happened directly to them.
So what's your first instinct? I think for a lot of us it might be, wow, they're being a little dramatic, right? But what if it isn't drama? What if that incredibly intense reaction is actually a clue to how their brain is wired? That's the big question we're going to unpack together.
All right, so first up, let's get to the heart of what this child is actually going through in that moment.
For our 5-year-old, this really isn't about being immature or wanting attention. What we're actually seeing is a nervous system that processes emotions more deeply, more vividly. Their emotional radar can be just as sharp as their intellect, making them incredibly tuned into the world in a way that can be, well, a little overwhelming sometimes.
So if it's not them just being dramatic, then what is it? Well, there's actually a fascinating psychological concept that helps explain this.
It's a term called emotional overexcitability, or OE for short. Basically, it's an inborn tendency to feel things more. Not just sadder or happier, but to experience a whole range of really complex emotions. And here's the key part. It fuels these incredibly strong empathetic connections. That 5-year-old isn't just feeling sad for the character. In a very real way, they are feeling the character's pain.
Now, emotional OE is actually part of a bigger picture. A psychologist named Kazimir Dabrowski identified 5 of these overexcitabilities, these heightened ways of experiencing life that we often see in gifted folks. You've got high energy, sensory sensitivity, a wild imagination, but for today, we're zeroing in on that intense emotional world.
So what does this actually look like in real life? Well, it's way more than just crying at movies. We're talking about a deep well of compassion, a powerful sense of right and wrong, and forming these incredibly loyal, strong attachments. And it's not just in their head. It can show up physically. That stress and emotional intensity can lead to actual stomach aches, blushing, or headaches.
And as you can probably imagine, feeling everything this intensely, well, it's a classic double-edged sword. It comes with some amazing gifts, but also some really significant challenges. On the one hand, this deep well of empathy can fuel incredible compassion, creativity, and a really strong moral compass. These are the kids who grow up to be amazing advocates and leaders. But on the flip side, their peers might find them a bit too much. This can lead to feeling isolated, and that intensity can sometimes look a lot like anxiety or ADHD, putting them at risk for being misdiagnosed.
Now, there's a common stereotype out there that all gifted children are these super intense, emotional beings. But the science, it actually paints a much more nuanced picture. A huge meta-analysis back in 2016 looked at all the research, and what it found was that, yeah, gifted kids do score higher on emotional OE, but the difference isn't as massive as you might think. It's more in the small to medium range.
In fact, and this is a really crucial point, the single strongest trait linked to giftedness isn't emotional intensity, it's intellectual overexcitability. You know, that relentless curiosity, that drive to ask why and figure things out. Emotional OE, it turns out, actually has the weakest link of all 5. This really challenges that old stereotype, doesn't it?
So knowing all this, how can we, as parents, as educators, as friends, actually support a child with such an intense inner life? It's not about trying to quiet the feelings. It's about giving them the tools to navigate the storm.
A great place to start is this 4-step approach. And step 1 is so simple but so powerful. Just validate the feeling. Saying something like, wow, I can see that really made you sad, is huge. It tells them they're not crazy for feeling this way. From there, you help them name it. Then you actively build a toolkit of coping strategies. And finally, you make sure they have a safe, quiet spot they can go to when it all just feels like too much.
And what do those tools look like? Well, they can be wonderfully practical things. Journaling to get all those big feelings out on paper. Simple deep breathing exercises to calm their body down. There's even a really cool mental technique called the container method, where you teach them to imagine putting a big, overwhelming feeling into a box to look at later when they feel stronger.
Okay, so let's circle all the way back to our 5-year-old watching that movie. Let's look at them again, but this time through our new lens.
What were those tears really about?
They weren't a sign of immaturity. They weren't a flaw. They were the mark of a world-class capacity for empathy. That intense reaction is the very same trait that allows for profound connection, for deep compassion, for incredible creativity. It's not a bug. It's a feature.
And this connects to a really powerful idea from Dabrowski's work. He believed that these intense emotional moments, these crises, are actually opportunities. They're the fuel for what he called positive disintegration, a process where you kind of fall apart a little, but then you rebuild yourself into someone stronger and more complex. It's growth.
And that leaves us with the final and maybe the most important question. Once we understand where this intensity comes from, our job changes. It's no longer about trying to fix them or get them to calm down. The real work is helping these amazing kids understand their own hearts, so they can learn to see their incredible sensitivity not as a burden they have to carry, but as the very source of their greatest superpower.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.